Thank you. I'm Alistair Hardiker. I'm the editor of Museums and Heritage and Advisor Chair for this session, Sancho's Journey, Decolonizing Heritage Sites Using Mixed Reality Performances. Please welcome Chania Potts, Youth Participation Officer, Dr. Kirsten Riley, Senior Digital Manager, and Georgina Sutherland, Interpretation Manager at English Heritage. Please put your hands together. Thank you.
Hi there, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. So my name is Georgina, and these are my colleagues, Kirsten and Chania, and we all work for English Heritage in various different departments. And so we're here to talk about a research project that we undertook at Marble Hill House. So Sancho's Journey, it's an Arts Council funded project in both the UK and the US, where we worked with multiple partners. So Brunel University and the University of Essex in the UK, and then other partners, including Historic Deerfield, which is a colonial village site in the US. So the research project looked at what can immersive digital technology contribute to decolonizing heritage sites and their stories. So we chose to have Marble Hill House take part in this project. It's a Georgian house near Twickenham in southwest London, and it was built by Henrietta Howard. It has connections to colonialism, especially through the fact that bonds were used to finance the building of the house. And also it has a mahogany staircase, which we know the mahogany came from Belize and probably harvested by enslaved people. So our primary objective in this project was to create an engaging, immersive digital media experience at Marble Hill, which would reveal the site's unseen connections to the transatlantic slave trade. The mixed reality technology offered a powerful metaphor. The site's links to empire can often be unnoticed, but can be made visible, just like the digital layer in the mixed reality is made visible through the technology. So there were many different facets to this project, including the R&D and trialing things, using live actors, having digital technology, consultation, and testing. So the performances themselves created this new piece of site-specific mixed reality promenade theatre, which linked the material objects in Marble Hill House, like the staircase, with 18th century England's connection to the triangular trade. We also had interventions from Ghanaian cultural heritage, such as Anansi the spider, who transformed the real 18th century world using the imaginative freedom of theatre and digital media. And here you can see in this picture, the actor playing Ignatius Sancho, one of our characters that we used. And you can see a person on the right with the virtual reality tech on their head, and they can see this person through their headset, but they can also see all around them in the room as well. So the reason we did this is to reframe the story of the house about whose labour helped create the wealth that was able to build Marble Hill. So we worked to achieve a seamless interface between the digital technology and the live actors so that performers could interact naturally with the virtual content. And the live actors also contributed to helping visitors feel comfortable with the technology. So the story itself is a fictional meeting between Ignatius Sancho, who was a prominent abolitionist, lived in London, who was born on a slave ship on the Atlantic, and Lady Betty Germain, sister-in-law and friend of Henrietta Howard, who built the house. So the premise is that Ignatius and Lady Betty are showing you, the visitor, around the house. And then the topic of the source of the wealth and some of the objects comes up in the conversation and becomes a topic of discussion. And Nancy, the spider, who you can see here with a gourd pot, he acts as a guide for visitors. So first of all, visitors were helped on with the headsets and prepped on how to use them. Then Anansi starts the story. He introduces people to the context of the story and acts as a conduit between the real and the fictional world. Anansi then takes visitors through to the front door of Marble Hill, where they knock on the door and Ignatius Sancho answers, and then visitors are taken around the house. So as part of this research project, we did over 30 performances, which enabled us to sort of trial out what we were doing. The idea being that we can then learn from what we did and be able to roll out things in the future. It wasn't that we're putting this on for visitors right now, this second. So I'm going to now show you, hopefully, a short clip of Anansi welcoming visitors to Marble Hill.
Welcome, my fellow travelers. Let me introduce myself. I am Anansi. I'm here to be your guide on a journey of fact and fiction, spirit and earth. I have traveled from my beginnings amongst the Asante Kingdom in what is now Ghana, all the way to the West Indies and the Americas. I travel on the wind through the music and the stories of my people. Even now, in Jamaica, in Suriname, in Trinidad and in St. Vincent's, tales of me are told at night, in the gloaming, when the shadows are lengthening and the darkness is creeping in. It's an eerie time, but it suits these stories best. Now, I'm a shapeshifter. Oh, you may see me here today as a man, but sometimes I can be a little spider. I speak to the creatures in the forest, and sometimes I play tricks on them. I can be good, but I can also be cunning. Let me tell you one of my stories. Gather around.
So that gives you a bit of a flavour of Kwaku playing Anansi at the beginning of the visitor's experience. I'm now going to hand over to Kirsten, who's going to give you a bit more detail about the digital side of things.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Yeah. I'm Kirsten and I'm the Senior Digital Curatorial Manager at English Heritage. As Georgina has mentioned, Sancho's journey was part of a collaborative research project with an international team across different disciplines, including, I want to do that. Realize there's something wrong. Including interaction design, theatre direction, script writing, interpretation, and curation. Not to mention the extensive involvement of the on-site teams who helped to actually make this into a theatrical production. But a big part of it was, of course, the immersive nature of the augmented reality. The 3D models used in the production, and you can see some of them here, were created by an amazing team of designers who really engaged with the cultural integrity of the assets that they were producing. These were fundamental to the story, and whether taking the form of human avatars or musical instruments, they needed to be believable, they needed to be credible. Now, it's all very well designing great digital products, but making them work seamlessly with human-centered interactions can be challenging, something that makes a mixed reality production so particularly complicated. Okay. And I have to say that we gave the actors involved, you saw one of the actors in the video, we gave the actors that were involved in this a really tough job. Not only did they have to learn their lines and engage directly with a live audience, but they were also wearing a small on-body IoT or Internet of Things device just underneath their costumes. This device allowed them to discreetly trigger content that appeared in the HMD, or what we call the head-mounted display. In the case of this, it was a HoloLens, but other manufacturers are available. These devices would also send haptic signals or a buzz that would act as a cue for the actors to either continue with the storyline or make an acknowledgement of some kind of something happening in the room. These devices were then further connected to a timeline system that controlled what was rendered in the HoloLens based on a set of predefined scenes and actions that followed the script that we had produced. So all of this was set up in advance. But not only did the actors have to second guess whether the trigger had worked and the participants were actually experiencing the spatial and augmented reality that they were meant to have through the HMD or the headset, but then they had to continue acting, all the while being cognizant of the participants' reaction to that content. Because it's worthwhile reminding ourselves here that we were subjecting the participants to immersive narratives dealing with the transatlantic slave trade and racialized trauma. And we couldn't predict within that experience how each person might actually react to any given moment within the experience. So the mixed reality system was designed to make the interchange between worlds seamless and to enable the occurrence of what we were calling magical moments where the virtual and the physical became synchronized. The question is, did it always work? What I would say is this is innovative technology using prototype devices. We were among the first to trial it within a mixed reality environment. So there were challenges. And what I would recommend going forward to anyone doing this type of project is to have what we had, which is professional actors that can improvise on the spot when something doesn't go right. But beyond the operational challenges, there are other barriers to this technology. And you'll see when you go around some of the displays that people are selling this technology. There's one provider who's saying it's the future of exhibitions. But the technology and the programming behind it are expensive and therefore somewhat exclusionary. This is not an area everyone can get into. As Georgina had said, this was an AHRC funded research project. The headsets cost £4,000, give or take. You might get a discount today, but they cost a lot of money. And as yet, they're not designed to be bought by the general public. And once deployed in a real world setting like this, they need to be calibrated for each user, making scalability of the experience an issue. There were 3 to 4 participants in each tranche of the experiences here. Things like connectivity, where you're using them, and also simply just wearing the headsets. For some people that felt uncomfortable, disorientating, claustrophobic, although not nearly as much as a VR headset, which does completely close you off to the outside world. But despite all of that, using augmented reality for this project was an effective use of the technology, allowing us not only to play with time, but alter spaces that cannot be changed in the real world to reflect new or alternative narratives, and allowing a passive audience to become engaged participants in a decolonialization narrative. The filmmaker Chris Milk once called virtual reality the ultimate empathy machine. And I think that beyond the details of all the tech, it's this aspect of empathy, of being able to put yourself inside another world while still inhabiting this one, that makes virtual, extended, and indeed mixed realities like this work so well when it comes to engaging an audience with particularly challenging themes, as was the subject of this. I'll now pass over to Chania, who's going to talk to you about the youth engagement aspect of the project. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me okay? My name is Chania, and I work as a South Eastern London Youth Participation Officer for the Youth Engagement Team. From the outset of the project, it was felt that it was really important that Sancho's journey had a steering group and sounding board of individuals with diverse lived experience and knowledge. We worked with a group of 6 paid young consultants from International Slavery Museum's Youth Forum, whose role was to collaborate with the project team by assisting in creative idea and discussion sessions on the project storylines and to give feedback and input on the development of the project. The group was made up of young people with a range of backgrounds. Some were freelance creative practitioners, some were undergraduate students, and a couple were master's students. All were curious, probing, and ready to challenge. As well as helping us shape the project, We created sessions that would help the young people further develop their own understanding of decolonisation in heritage spaces and broaden their professional network as they learned from different external facilitators. In November 2022, after an online introduction to the project, the group visited Marble Hill House for the first time. Some members of the group had never visited a historic site like Marble, and I remember one young person particularly captivated by the artwork there. They couldn't believe the textures and colours that had been created in these paintings that were over 300 years old. The group's relative unfamiliarity with sites like Marble meant that they had an unrestrained freedom of thinking about how histories could be told in this sort of space, which was really refreshing and exciting for us to be able to tap into. Before beginning the project, the feeling amongst the group was that country houses can often feel like, and I quote, nostalgia for luxurious, simpler lives, but that the hidden human cost of this civilized way of living is not often visibly acknowledged or considered in these spaces today. The group were really excited to be a part of the project that would challenge this and delve deeper into the lesser known, lesser visible histories of a house like Marble. In December 2022, the group consulted on the design of the digital assets for the augmented reality experience in a session led by project partner Maritza Diemer, games designer at the University of Brunel. When the group visited Marble a month earlier, they'd been particularly captivated by Malika Booker's Songs of Mahogany poem and how the mahogany staircase, which has such a weighted history, sits at the very centre of the house and its history, literally and also metaphorically. The group were insistent that the jungle should play a significant part in the virtual world we were creating to demonstrate the cyclical nature of the building of a house like this in the 18th century. They were keen to highlight the importance of bringing the roots of the mahogany tree and all of its sacred and spiritual associations into the house itself through augmented reality. This would bring into the house an element of its history that can only be appreciated through the medium of technology in this way. This was incorporated into the digital design assets for the final performances and was later commented on in general evaluation as one of the most moving parts. As mentioned, the group had sessions with external facilitators to aid their learning and understanding of decolonisation. With Dr. Leila Kamali, the group looked at the work of historians, practitioners, and artists through time who pioneered decolonial ways of looking at history. With Dr. Michelle Asantewa at Kenwood House, the group learned about Anansi and Caribbean spiritual folklore, an integral part of the Sancho Journeys script. With Abigail Coppins and Professor Kate Asprey, the group visited Portchester Castle to hear about the research Abigail and Kate had undertaken and the development of related projects inspired by this on site, such as the Ancestors' Plane. With Dr. Carol Ann Dixon, the group explored the intersection between race and heritage and examined the politics of race in the 18th century and its impact today in heritage interpretation. In August 2023, the group had a session with co-partner Holly Maples to provide feedback on the script, which would be used for the final performance of Mixed Reality. We got into a discussion about slavery being inextricably linked with capitalism and what this means today, and they gave some incisive critical points which helped with the script's development. Working with this group of critical friends was so insightful in so many ways, and was the first of its kind in how we have worked with young people before in English heritage. The young people themselves said that the project helped open their minds to finding new ways to see and understand heritage sites, and to learn to look more deeply at the stories and histories of sites in future. One critical friend said that they felt this sort of work, highlighting lesser-known histories in creative and engaging ways, is essential for the heritage sector and its relevance in future. Another said that they loved working on the project, both for their own professional development and meeting experts in the project team, but also personally in contributing to new ways for people to engage with these sites. The group were unanimous in their feeling that they would carry forward a new lens within which to look and think about country houses in future. I'll pass back over to Georgina to talk a bit more about the evaluation.
Okay, so when thinking about how we evaluated this project, because it was a research project from start to finish, the very nature of doing the project meant that we had to think critically about what we were doing at every stage of the way, and we could incorporate those learnings as we went along. We also connected with the participants in the research project through interviews at the end. These are a few of the quotes that we had from the participants. I think one of the most successful parts of it was that the actors and the digital headsets kind of worked really well together. The actors were very able to kind of weave the digital part seamlessly with their live action part. And I think that that was an area that I certainly felt was going to be really challenging, but came out really well. People also really enjoyed the actors and the premise of the show. One area where we had to change things as we went along is at the beginning of the experience, people thought that it was a factual play rather than a fictional play based on real people. So that was something that we had to change during the performances to make it really clear at the beginning that although Ignatius Sancho and Lady Betty Germain are real people, they and we based what they said on their own letters and on primary research, they didn't actually meet at Marble Hill at that time. So I think that was an important learning for us as we went along. And I think it's also helped us at English Heritage in our teams to reflect on our practice and how we can engage people and have a sensitivity about what we're doing to make sure that when we're talking about this kind of content, that we engage with experts, have critical friends, and think reflectively about things before we go on and put them on for visitors. So we're hoping that from the results of our sort of research and evaluation, that we can take this forward into other areas in the future. So I'm going to hand back to Chania now to talk about our next steps.
As probing as ever, at the end of the project, we had a discussion about the broader legacy of the project with the Critical Friends group, who asked, what should come next? And how do we continue with this momentum to create wider change? Well, since the culmination of the project, we've organised a decolonising heritage practice through performance workshop at Marble Hill, in which heritage professionals from across the country who have experience in decolonising practice met to discuss their own work and hear about our process and learnings from Sancho's journey. I've also been working on a related project of sorts with arts and social change charity CONI, again, using technology to explore Marble's complex history. A group of young people local to Richmond worked with CONI across a series of workshops to research and develop an interactive smartphone game, which will explore similar themes. This will be launching this summer, targeted towards other young people and adults visiting the site, so do keep your eyes peeled. Finally, and excitingly, Sancho's journey got shortlisted for a Museum and Heritage Award, the best use of digital, so we'll be representing this evening. Thank you for listening, and I think it's time for questions. I can't see that we're out of time, so please let us know if you have any.
Can you hear me via this microphone? Oh, excellent. Hi, can you hear me? Oh, hang on, let me put this earpiece in. Oh, I don't have an earpiece. May I have an earpiece?
In there somewhere.
Thank you. Bear with me. That's okay. Well, might be a question, might be that you. Oh, that's true. Okay, please fire away.
Hello, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I have two questions. I'm going to be greedy. So, firstly, it's really nice that you've used critical friends. I'm just wondering how far that work went in terms of integrating a lot of their thoughts and kind of their interest into the work you were doing with the digital engagement, and how it integrate into the content. And also, what kind of care were you giving the young people afterwards? Because a lot of the issues they were kind of on themes that they were going through is quite traumatic. So yeah, those are my two questions.
Can you hear me through this? Great, thank you for your question. Yeah, so we were partnered with the International Slavery Museum's Youth Forum. So we always had a safeguarding lead from the Youth Forum with the group whenever we were doing activities. And we made sure to incorporate decompression sessions after any activities or sessions that were particularly challenging or sensitive. In terms of how much work was incorporated by the young people and the critical friends, from the outset of the project, we were clear that there were some things that we wouldn't be able to be that flexible with in terms of, like, obviously the technology we were using, the kind of framework of the script. But they were able to feed back at kind of each critical point. So when we were doing the design of the digital assets, when we were developing the script, they were consulted on those things, and their feedback was really important and valuable to us, and was definitely embedded as much as it could be in the final outcome.
Thank you. So you mentioned that this was a research collaboration and it was AHRC funded. So I guess my question is where did the genesis come from? Did it come from an academic research project approaching you, or inverse? And what would your advice be for the development of those kind of cross-sector collaborations?
I think that the genesis of it came about from our head of department, Dominique Bouchard, who met up with Marie Sedima from Brunel University. They met at a conference, I believe. And so through their conversations, that was the genesis of the project, rather than Brunel particularly approaching us or us approaching Brunel. So it was quite a collaborative start to the project. And sorry, can you remind me of the second part of your question?
So I guess reflecting on that, given there's both funding and appetite for those kind of collaborations, how would you advise people to go around forging them?
Okay, so I think that whenever working in these kind of collaborations, it's important to know what you or your own organization wants to get out of it, and to be clear about what resources you're going to be able to give to it. And just being open and flexible with the partners. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, just to say, with a lot of these initiatives in AR, but also in AI as well, there are a lot of academic institutions doing research at the moment. You just need to be cognizant of that and be able to reach out to them as a partner. And a lot of times with English Heritage, we have a lot of data and we have a lot of sites, and so we tend to be approached by them. It's a partnership. That kind of funding and that kind of research isn't going to last for long once it starts to become more commercialized. But I think that just now is the time to be able to reach out to organizations and get involved in research projects, because the amount of money that is involved in this makes it exclusionary without the funding.
Hi, could you talk a little bit more about the international collaboration component? Did you mention that you were working with Colonial Williamsburg?
It was a site called Historic Deerfield in Massachusetts. I haven't been there myself, but I understand that it's a colonial village that is open to visitors. And so the team, which consisted of Brunel University and the University of Essex and a university in the States, they did a similar project to what we did at Marble Hill, but it was site specific to Historic Deerfield. So they used some records that they had of the people who lived in one of the houses. And they were a family who had enslaved people. And so they took some of the people from the sort of historical records, and they made a similar kind of collaboration over there.
Hello. I'm interested just how you might characterize the visitor response to this. Particularly, I think, well, with works of theatre, they always have to undergo little changes and tweaks. When it came to people who hadn't been involved in the genesis of the project, witnessing it for the first time, were there any changes or developments that came about because of that?
I mean, I think with any of these things, again, going back to it being a research project, I think in total there were around about 90 participants in total that took part in this. Obviously, if it was bigger, there would be more people involved. We would definitely do things differently based on the feedback that we got. But I think that generally speaking, the feedback that we received was really positive in terms of the type of experience that people felt this type of technology opened up to them. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just to echo what Kirsten said, really, as you said, with anything of this kind of nature, there's always going to be things that need changing as you go along. So as I mentioned, we kind of had to make it a lot more explicit that it was a fictional play, not a factual piece of information. And that's what, as we had to do that as we went along. And I think there were other kind of small tweaks that we made to the script and to the technology, which helped us. And I think if we were going to sort of be rolling it out in a similar way, whether that was using a smartphone or if the technology became more available, then I think that we would perhaps approach it slightly differently in terms of how we introduce people to the topic. I think that would be quite helpful. So yeah.
Hi. Who were the visitors taking part? How did you select them? Were they sort of representative of your typical visiting audience, or were you trying to reach a new audience with the research?
So the visitors, they were not kind of visitors to Marble Hill, because we felt that if we just opened it up, it would be a bit challenging because we'd get too many people trying to have the tickets. So we invited some industry peers, we invited staff and volunteers at Marble, and then we also invited some community groups as well.
Any more questions? Yes.
Thank you again for that. It was so interesting. I was just wondering, the digital aspect of it is obviously so specific to the performance and to the location. How is that being treated now that the project's kind of concluded? Is it being treated as like a born digital asset, or kind of what's happened to it now?
Good question. I don't have all the answers to that, but what I will say is that I know that there is a toolkit that is being developed by I think it's Maritza and the team there at Brunel, so that they can roll out, rather than the specific, say the actual assets that were produced that were specific to this project. It would more be a toolkit that would be generalized, and how could we apply the same learnings and the same principles that were applied to this to other types of content and other types of experiences in different sites. So yeah, unfortunately with something like this, often the assets are not necessarily reusable unless you return to the same production, but the principles are. So.
Any last questions? Right at the back, I get to do some steps.
Fantastic project, and good luck in the awards tonight. My question is there more detailed evaluation that has been published that we can go and look at and research online?
Yes and no, there will be, but it's not available yet. So one of our partners, the University of Essex, they were leading on the evaluation side of things. So I'm sure that will become available as we go down the line.
Okay, thanks.
Any more for any more? Okay. I mean, if you do feel like you want to have a quick word at the end privately, I'm sure the ladies will stick around for a couple of moments. But please join me in thanking them. They've done an absolutely fantastic job. Fascinating project and rounding up an absolutely charming day.